So, I'm obviously kind of a contradicting person. I mean, most people are, but even more so because I seem to project this sense of I'm almost sadistic, or I get off on people's deaths or deaths in general. But then I also exercise compassion and try to help people. And I know that some people have kind of confronted me about that, and then some people are just curious as to how that is possible. I kind of just clear the air here. Essentially, the way that my plutonian confess is psychological clusterfucks, I guess, everywhere. In my daily life, throughout the way that I interpret things or the things that I end up interacting with, crazy shit just happens to me, okay? So, and also because of some certain aspects that I do have, and because of the town in which I was born in, that's well known for its paranormal activity. From a young age, I, at least as far as I gathered, understood that there was something going on afterwards, and that I've been a witness to death so many times throughout my life. I've kind of just gotten to the point where I accept it as an everyday kind of scenario. Because of my Saturn conjunct the moon in my chart, I just think death is funny. I don't think that, yeah, I mean, there's no sugarcoating that. I'm not bothered by somebody dying, people dying. If it was somebody I knew and I liked them, I would be kind of down because we wouldn't be able to do the things we do together anymore. But beyond that, I don't have any kind of opinion or feeling about it. Get over it. That's how I feel. But I do have a weak spot for suffering. Being subjected to suffering or abuse or being trapped, continually being tortured and tormented. My heart just bleeds for that. Despite what people may think, death is better than suffering. And just think about it. Death isn't that bad. Once you die, you're over in a few minutes. You know what I mean? So it's the people that are alive that then are there to understand that the death occurred, that then are the ones that kind of paint it as a bad thing. Because loss is awful. And when loss happens, grief follows. And grief is a form of suffering. Regardless if it's suffering that you inflicted or not, or if you didn't deserve it or not, that's not the point. But suffering is something that I have sympathy with other people for. I understand that life is full of suffering. I kind of strive to help people find a way to either cope with it and or minimize or eliminate unnecessary, premeditated, or malicious negative kind of energy coming at them, aka somebody else making them suffer, or them torturing or tormenting themselves. That is what I try to help people with and alleviate. So I felt like that was just something that maybe I should clarify, because I have gotten a commentary about it, and me being a plutonian first, and I choose to be an astrologer. I don't choose to be a plutonian. I choose to be an astrologer. And as an astrologer, you project what you know. And that's the whole concept of know thyself. And I know suffering. I know the dark stuff that a lot of people don't like to talk about. And I'm also starting to realize, too, that the reason why I have such a difficult time articulating myself, I had this theory a long time ago that depending on the elemental balance between what your Mercury element is and what your rising element is, would determine if you have issues being able to articulate yourself. Even mine. I have a Scorpio Mercury, which is water. Mercury is the way that your cognition, your thought process, the way that you perceive things, and then the way that you actually collect your thoughts and then try to project them verbally through language. And then your rising is just supposed to be the skin you're in, the person that you're born at the moment you're here. It has its own behavioral things that are evident from the moment of birth before your cognition is even developed, and you know how to talk and read and speak and whatever. So that's already predetermined by your ascendant. That's stuff that you cannot change, alter, or improve of any kind. Your Mercury, you can train yourself, you can rewire your brain as it is, more or less. In fact, I actually have one of the books that I'm using as a reference for my book that I'm working on. And The Brain That Changes Itself, how different thoughts can actually change the way that your brain sends messages and the activity in the different like cortexes and lobes and stuff. So you can change it. And there is the modality access of the mind, which is represented by, obviously, Virgo and Gemini are both the co-rulers of Mercury. And the polarity is an important factor in medical astrology. So the polarity of Virgo would be Pisces, and then Gemini, the polarity of that is Sagittarius. You notice that these are all mutable, and the houses that they represent have to do with our daily lives and our environment influencing us, and how we absorb information from that environment, and how it changes our thought process. Thought process being the higher vibration of Mercury at the 9th house. So you can change the way that you perceive things, the way that you talk, and how you organize your thoughts. But you can't change the way that the packaging comes. It's like if you got a Gemini that's playing like charades with a Scorpio, and because Scorpios hold a lot in, and they're very hard to read sometimes, and then the Gemini's just all over the place, like, oh my god, I don't know. That's the manifestation of when I try to articulate myself. The point that I'm getting at is that if we're just going back to the plutonian concept, plutonians are supposed to be the epitome or have esoteric symbolic connections to the occult, darkness, secrets, things that humanity doesn't want to acknowledge. And for me, I'm not the typical plutonian, obviously, because I have a grand trine of air in my chart, which makes me want to tell all the plutonian secrets. And that's difficult for me because I am that Gemini trying to play charades with the plutonian aspect of me. I've noticed this over the last few years. I can think in my head, just to myself. I'm not even trying. It just randomly comes to me because it's the plutonian things, all about feeling. And subconsciously, I don't even realize it, and I just start thinking of something, and I'm piecing together something in my head. And I used to think that because I didn't get to a pen and paper and write it down fast enough, that I wasn't going to be able to remember it. And then I actually downloaded like a recording device app on my phone, and at moments like that, when I'm in the car or wherever else, I'd pull my phone out and then try to say word for word back, like I'm repeating what I was just thinking in my head, even though it was completely articulated and everything. And I'm not able to repeat it, and it drives me up a wall. And that's what I'm struggling with. And I feel like part of this was partially therapeutic because of this transit, the Sun conjunct Saturn. There's a lot of fucked up things, per se, that I will start bringing into the light. And because of the Uranus-Pluto square, specifically the psychological ramifications of that, and a lot of events that will then transpire, like the manifestations of Kali Yuga and all kinds of suffering significantly. But I put it like that because if people are offended by something I say, or think how fucked up I am concerned personally myself from what suffering that will happen. And I almost feel like I'm easing people into it, and that I'm also like plutonian whistleblower, because even though there will be other plutonians that are willing to discuss and talk about it, I would assume that a lot of them have issues articulating those kinds of concepts like I do myself. There might be some people out there that have kind of worked through it and a little better than I have. Those people might also not want to project that kind of perception onto people. And me having an Aquarius MC, there's other aspects of throughout my chart that make me have no shame to share any of my thoughts or perceptions. I'm obviously a plutonian, so I don't want to go too deep into my personal things. And a lot of the ideas that will come to my mind are a lot of the things that end up being part of the plutonian archetype. And so I think that people, although they're kind of rejecting my narrative, like I did a transit talk the other day about a story and the aspects that transpired with an attempted murder and arson, and I actually got hate mail for that. So, I mean, I understand that that's a touchy subject, but the good news is nobody died. I mean, the person that did that's going to go to jail, I'm sure, because she's got 3 counts of attempted murder and arson. It could be worse, but that's another thing that people need to get over, is that there's going to be significant amounts of deaths, and death is going to be a part of your daily life. And I know that sounds like I'm projecting, but just wait. So once everybody realizes about all the revelations pretty much happening, I mean, let's just sum it up like that. I'm just trying to find the easiest way to, like, kind of get my point across. Revelations, go read it. Go back, even if you're not Christian or whatever, go find a Bible, go read it. And just kind of imagine, if you were going to translate that to modern time context scenarios, like 1,000 Ways to Die status, that's what's going on, okay? And once people start to realize that a little bit more, I think that they're going to understand the plutonian perspective a bit more. And I also think that that's another manifestation of the Uranus-Pluto square, because Uranus is abnormality, and Pluto on a mental level is your psyche, just the way that your psychological mechanisms and the way that your brain works in general. So we are never going to be the same after this. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing I can do. The best thing that I could assume anyone could do is to try to accept it and prepare for it.